The Guardians, Path of Ascension, by Bruce R.F. Chapter 1. Youthful Beginnings. The blue shimmer of his buddy's eyes tells Simon volumes about his adversary. Even without the fancy eyewear adorned like goggles around his head, he can feel the shift in the air, the way it bends unnaturally around Seldin, as he pulls the ether into his core. Between that and the calculations projected onto his lenses, he knows something is coming. "You're not using the conduit," Simon comments knowingly, eyeing the whirling vortex of energy beside them, invisible to anyone except those in tune, despite its brilliance in the night. Seldin's brow arcs slightly as a smirk stretches across his lips. "You can tell that?" he questions, and Simon casually taps at the elastic strap around his head. Seldin's smirk then grows into a smile at the very notion he's been found out. Although his secret might be blown, his heart flutters nonetheless with the sheer excitement of trying a new technique. This mid-suburban park, not far from Simon's home, has been the christening to quite a few bouts in their time, for the two of them have always been competitive and friends from the beginning. They'd often meet here in this clearing for the sake of sport. The natural abundance of energy here has been a staple in their evolution, feeding them and their friends since they discovered their gifts. With the moon to his back, Seldin gets ready, while sinking low into a stance. The light dances reflectively off his pale skin, while the wind whips around him, violently tugging at his black canvas robes and short brown hair. The cool air is soothing to the heat of his sweaty body, but this is no time to be calm. Whoosh! A foot comes flying quickly across Simon's face. With an abrupt turn left, he rolls with the motion, allowing only the wind to graze him as he comes about, eyeing the weak point of an exposed back as his buddy's kick finishes the follow-through. Bam! In less than an instant, two palms clap Seldin's shoulders, forcing him to lurch, stumbling forward, and with intent he slaps a hand to the ground before bouncing off, then landing into a crouching stance. Immediately he turns about, kicking a front sweep to Simon's forward foot, as the two engage, forearm to forearm, wrist to wrist. Each blow comes blindingly fast, strobing after images in the moonlight, with delayed cracks of sound to their movement. Although Seldin is the younger of the two at age 15, and only half a year behind his friend, he is certainly not the weaker, a fact that Simon is well aware of as he carefully calculates every scrap of data spilling into his optics. He can hardly fathom how precisely his foe can channel the ether without assistance, augmenting the flow like a finely tuned throttle for actions that require strength and others that rely on speed. Simon, however, is no pushover. His ability to interface directly with his devices grants him a level of thought unthinkable to most humans, and limited solely by the hardware. It's a skill he's honed over the years, and one that's kept his best friend on his toes for some time. Even so, the balance of power often shifts between them, as competition keeps them sharp. Back and forth the two of them go, circling around the conduit, neither able to seize the advantage nor willing to sample from the column of luminescent energy spiraling into the sky. Pap! A left jab cracks a lens, rocking Simon's face and casting beads of sweat from his buzzed, spiky hair. He teeters back, flailing his arms out front to regain his balance, as Seldin lunges forward with a knee aimed for his sternum. In that moment, Simon's eyes lock on to the scan of highlighted targets in his view. Immediately he slaps aside his friend's knee, before strafing outside his guard and kicking out his back leg. Suddenly, Seldin's world slows down as his mind races to catch up. His body turns horizontally in the air, and before he can manage a counterplay, Simon's elbow crashes down into his sternum, delivering him to the ground with a breathtaking thud. "Damn it!" Seldin exclaims, embedding a fist into the grass as he rights himself into a crouch. Simon chuckles loudly as his friend's energy drops down to a non-threatening level. "Whoa, that was some move, you almost... No, wait, you didn't even come close. What now, you throwing in the towel?" he taunts. Seldin shakes his head, slyly cupping a hand behind his right knee. "Hardly," he pants. "I've got something new for you." "No, you don't," Simon says gloatingly, "because I'm gonna finish this." He steps into the pool of ether with outstretched arms as he welcomes the surge of energy. Having little time, Seldin concentrates, focusing his breathing. The air around them swirls fiercely, casting gusts of dirt and throwing leaves every which way. Seldin can feel the pressure in his core increasing. A rush comes over him like goosebumps, with the hair on his arms standing on end, as the ether flows into the palm of his hand. At first, there's heat, as the energy builds to the smell of ozone, and then a faint glimmer of light. Glancing down briefly before retaking sight of his target, Seldin then darts toward his opponent, his hand cocked in position ready. "Hanai!" His chanting voice echoes in the night. Simon's eyes open wide, hearing a voice and the warning alarms blaring into his ear. Overwhelmed by the alerts, he panics just as his friend's attack closes in, and then... Spear! Releases Seldin as he thrusts his palm against Simon's unguarded chest. The energy crackles and flickers with a loud burst of bluish-white light. What? Simon shouts in surprise as he's thrown backward through the air, landing some distance away. Seldin immediately bursts into tear-filled laughter as his buddy slams into the ground. Holy shit, did you see that? You flew like 10 feet, dude! He exclaims, rushing to catch up, while shaking the sting from his hand. Simon attempts to kip up, then falls back onto his rear, still slightly dazed. No, he huffs. I was too busy falling, and it was 3 feet at best, he rebuts, saving face. Did you get any readings? Seldin asks, before plopping down into the soft, dew-covered grass, and Simon looks over with a half-smile as he pulls off his goggles to inspect the damage. Your core was over 1,300 joules before you hit me, he replies. That's fantastic, so my calculations were correct. That little thing can actually measure ether, Seldin expresses excitedly. And see it clear as crystal, but I had to suppress my own ability before I was sure it was working at first. Once I was certain, it was a definite enhancement, he replies, testing the integrity of the lens with a press of his thumb before passing the device to his buddy. Seldin waves off with a gesture of his hand and a shake of his head. No thanks, I prefer to rely on my own senses, Simi. But 1,300 joules? He asks with a breath. Yeah, that's higher than last week's bench test. Once I get back to the lab, I'll dump the data and run a comparative analysis, Simon says. I think it's right. Me and Leon have been training a lot. We're hoping to fly by the end of the summer, Seldin states. That's a cool thought, Simon says as he rolls back into the cool grass, staring up at the large moon in the night sky. If I could fly, I know where I'd go, he points. To the moon? Seldin asks with a half-smile. Mm-hmm. If I knew I'd survive, I'd visit all the planets. But... Simon sits up with a sigh. I don't think it's possible, he says. Seriously? That's impossible? With all we've seen? All we can do? The math checks out, Simon, Seldin argues. You're the physics guy, Simon shrugs. But you can't pick yourself up with a rope, Si. I don't see how it would work, he rebuts. Seldin just looks off with a sigh as he thinks about it. His eyes then trail back to his friend in his casual regalia, a tank top, shorts, and sandals, but it's the gray blotches and dark streaks on his right hand that draws his attention. What's with the veins? Seldin asks. Simon turns his hand about. Oh, that's right, I didn't tell you. He grins. Nanites, he replies. Seldin's head cocks in surprise. You never said they were ready. When the hell did you test them? He exclaims. In the lab before coming out. Guess you weren't the only one with a secret, Simon smirks. Version 1 was a success. How do you think I was keeping up with you? Last I checked, I topped out at 800 joules. The spider veins are just them pulling to heal my injuries. I broke my hand twice against you. He casually clenches a fist. As for the color, well, a negative side effect is that I seem to be losing pigment. But I'll fix it in version 2. So, haunted spire, huh? Whatever happened to no spells? Simon asks. It's not a spell, Simi. It's a power thought. I got the idea from Dean. You pick a word or short phrase to help bring your mind, body, and energy into focus. You know I'd never risk sorcery. Besides, spells rhyme, he retorts. And you decided to chant in Chinese, Simon chuckles. Hanai Spiha is canon of light. It's not Chinese, though. It just came to me, he says. Well, whatever it was, you were fast, and your hair was all static-mified, Simon comments. Well, that's something else I learned while training. I can raise and lower my power quickly, but it gives me goosebumps. It's such a rush, Seldin says. Simon looks at him somewhat dismissively while picking at blades of grass. Oh, I've done that before. I wouldn't rely on it, though. I liken it to overpowering a wire. Eventually it burns out, he tells him. But Seldin disagrees as he thinks about it. Are you coming by tonight? I'd like to run some more scans, Simon says. Seldin looks his way. No, I can't. You forget, I have school in the morning, he says. Oh, right. Tomorrow's your last day. Come Saturday, you'll be a free man, Simon says. Yeah, we can't all get out early. Leon has another year, he laughs. We're all meeting up at the beach tomorrow night to celebrate. Simon nods. Jasra told me. She said Dean, Aris, and a few others should be there. Personally, I can't wait to test this out on the sorcerers, he says, gesturing with his goggles. It would be nice to finally get some data on them. They always read deceptively low, Seldin comments. When do you ship out for college? Simon asks, kinetically plucking a small rock from the ground for amusement. I'm not going, Seldin replies. Simon looks to him immediately. What? But I thought you were doing physics. Seldin lowers his eyes. I can't go now, Simon. There's still so much I don't know about Aether. Besides, you didn't go, he says. True, but I built semantics. With my help, Seldin argues. Simon concedes with a nod. That's not gonna piss off your dad? He asks. Funny you should ask. As far as he knows, my plane leaves Sunday morning for Shimburg University, Ireland. But I'll need your computer skills to make my residency believable. Simon tries. As long as he thinks I left, he won't look, Seldin says with an upturned hand. So then what's the plan? Hide out in the lab for the next few years? He asks. And stay with you and Johnsy? Simon shrugs. You practically live there now, he says. No, Seldin shakes his head. It's north for me, Simi. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I'm being drawn to something, he says, and Simon's eyes trail down to the rock in his hand. To be a guardian, he mumbles, and Seldin looks to him immediately. Yes, you feel it too, he asks. Simon shakes his head. It's just a word, but it's been in my head for a while. Just a word? Simi, this is huge. You don't see the connection? Oh, I wonder if the others are feeling this. Seldin stands, turning away with his eyes to the sky. Maybe. Well, okay, say you're right. What is a guardian? I mean, a guardian of what? Simon asks. Of life. Seldin's eyes meander as he turns back toward him. That's a little much, Simon rebuts. No, Simon, that's what I feel, Seldin says, tapping at his chest. He then pauses for a second, gathering his thoughts. Tomorrow, we'll ask the others.